This game is weird. It's odd, bizarre, strange, and all the other words that mean weird. In no particular order, this game will give you a talking tumour, sentient water dispensers, a compliment 'em up minigame, floppy disks, a giant butt statue, fat beatsies, and a sloth who throws up candy bars at regular intervals. Wrapped candy bars no less, work that one out. It is insane. Not in the same manner as the preposterous awesomeness of everything. That was the kind of random lunacy that dicking around with dev tools for the first time brings you. For Paradigm, a premise was set and stuck to throughout. A very, very mad premise that 1,387 Kickstarter backers saw fit to fund. And that Kickstarter labelled itself as a surreal adventure, so I'm not really sure where my surprise comes from. Let's jump right in and have a look at the premise, shall we? First, we get an in-universe advert for Designer Babies, which is a little sweary, quite fun, rather silly, and incredibly tongue-in-cheek, to the point where I feel I need to pad out my sentence so I can vaguely justify showing you a little bit more of the footage. We then cut to Paradigm, who is... this. He is this. This is he. His one desire is to make some fat beatsies and finish up his EP, but the computer needs a fixin' first. Also, his sentient chatbot roommate tells him that if he doesn't fix the computer, the nuclear power plant they live in might explode. What even are these words? Now, I've skipped over a few things for the sake of maintaining my usual video formula, so let's dive back to when you first boot up the game, where we find out that this is technically from yet another two-person team. One composer and one... well, it says created by, so I can only assume he did the art and the programming. Nice as it would be to round out the two-person game hat trick, there's a bunch of guest music credits at the end, so I'm not sure it counts. Anyway, that's where we first see what I assume to be an 80s aesthetic, but it could also be referencing the days of the Soviet Union, whose technology levels helped show a major disadvantage of an isolationist stance. If the major technological innovations are made elsewhere and you refuse to import them, you fall behind. Act surprised. Now, I don't think the game actually says it's in Russia, but there are various references to Russian culture. The main character has what I'm pretty sure is meant to be a Russian accent, but it's also a pretty obvious influence to take, considering the developer himself is Australian? Huh. Didn't see that coming. God only knows what happened in this game's timeline, because we're at some point in the future where we have designer babies and personality-infused artificial intelligence, but our first task is to track down a floppy disk. Actually, given how old some nuclear power plants are, that might still be accurate. Bad example. Point is, there's a retro look to virtually everything in the game. That video at the start was made to look like it was taken from a VHS tape, ask your dad, and you'll see more than one floppy disk. In fact, you'll see at least 3 before you even start the game. By the way, the dev doesn't seem to think much of people who want or like hint and hotspot systems. I mean, credit to the guy, he did put those systems in there, but why the shade? Damn. Since I both like and wanted to try out these systems, I plumped for the middle difficulty, and the difference kicks in as soon as the story segment ends, due to Paradigm conveniently forgetting how to exist, and needing the concept of consciousness explained to him by a floating tumour. Except you can decide not to run the tutorial, which presumably leaves Paradigm in a permanent state of existential crisis. Also, there's a choice between normal or dog tutorial.
Like a regular tutorial or a live action dog tutorial?
Definitely dog tutorial.
I don't think I need to comment on that, let's move on. If you thought that Thimbleweed Park had no respect for the fourth wall, Paradigm seems to have an outright vendetta against it. Still, it lays out what you can expect, and it does that early on. Expect weird. For a bit of normality, I'll talk about the interface. It's a coin/medallion/pop-up interface you access with the right mouse button, sporting look at, use, pick up, and talk to verbs. Unlike some more well-known examples, the verbs appear above where you click. I'm more used to it appearing around the point you click on, making all the verbs equidistant from the cursor. On the one hand, this way doesn't obscure what you clicked on, but on the impossible third hand, you could always put the name of the object you clicked on in the interface, problem more or less solved. I'm usually not a fan of coin interfaces because it makes you do extra clicking I don't think is necessary, but this is personal preference, you're not exactly hindered by it. Speaking of hindering, or actually the opposite of that, you mind that tumour that gives you a tutorial at the beginning? Unless you're on the highest difficulty, it lives in the top right corner, showing you hotspots when hovered over and offering hints when clicked on. And it sounds like this. Yep. Don't know what I expected, really. No number key shortcuts for dialogue, sadly, but I do like these tight shots of characters with depth of field behind them. It's a good way of showing off the artwork. The sometimes very creepy artwork. Other interface gubbins include this widget here, accessed by moving the mouse to the top of the screen, which gives you the map and inventory buttons. So while you can't double click to warp through exits, you do get to fast travel by map. That's fine. And you get the inventory by moving the mouse to the bottom of the screen. Normally I'd be more averse to pop-out widgets, but they're sizable enough that I don't accidentally close them with a wee mouse nudge. Hell, the inventory is practically full screen. On top of that, the map and inventory have keyboard shortcuts. Props for taking mechanics I don't normally like and making them work. I didn't find myself needing the talking tumour's help all that often, there's a rare sentence, to the point where I kind of forgot about it. Or at least I forgot that I could give you hints, the hotspot function got plenty of use. I did have to look at a walkthrough one time, not due to a bad or difficult puzzle, just me being an absolute dunce that day, and found out the developer himself had written one. Nice, good use of spoiler tags. As I may have already given away, I didn't find this game very difficult, but maybe that's what I get for playing on the middle difficulty. I don't mean that as a criticism, but for one thing, the very fact that I can say that means there's a lack of moon logic, always worth applauding. This genre does have something of a reputation after all. So if it's not a brain teaser, is there a good story behind it? Actually, yeah. Granted, it requires you to buy into the big weird world in the same logic that allows this guy to exist, but whilst being all sorts of silly, it's certainly not bad. A conspiracy to unravel, raising stakes, a sympathetic yet clearly deranged villain, there's something here. Not something you can necessarily take seriously, but something. Look, I'm not entirely sure what to think of this game, apart from weird. I am sure that it is weird. I mean, they specifically set out to create a surreal adventure, mission bloody accomplished. And while it took me 4.5 hours to finish, that was pretty much charging forward. There's a bunch of fun extras thrown in too. The aforementioned r/wholesome meme simulator is something you have to play, but there's also a post-apocalyptic dating sim to find. Or you can pass the time making Paradigm say hello to probably every object in the game. I didn't fully check that one, I'll be honest. And once you get to the end, there's multiple endings. I'm not going to spoil anything, but I don't think all of them are canonical. But it'll pass the time. No dog ending I notice, more's the pity. I will say that it's a pretty solid game of decent length, fair puzzles, and a lot of nice little touches for those who go looking. The biggest barrier is probably the humour, because while I enjoyed it, I can see it not appealing to everyone because weird. There's a demo lying around, so you can try that out, or maybe watch the first episode of a Let's Play. Either one should tell you what you need to know. But if that sense of humour is your jam, or you can simply get past it, there's some fun to be had here.
For this multiverse? Because if there is, I am going to have to speak to him.
I guess I'm technically the manager. Damn it, you messed up my spiel. I'm going to start again. Hi.